am the communications coordinator here at Wild Bird Trust, and yeah, I'm so happy to see so many of you guys here today. Before we start, I just like to thank everyone for their support and for their enthusiasm for our online programs. I know it's a difficult time right now, and it's a bit of a weird, strange transition for all of us. But yeah, I don't know. We're so happy that so many of you folks have been able to participate with us and continue to learn about birds and connect through our love for the natural world. So we do have some more online events coming up, including a public and environmental art tour next Saturday on June 13th with Erwin Ustindi, a Dawn Chorus listening party on June 14th with Donna Clark, as well as a presentation on Tsleil-Waututh life and climate change on June 20th with Elder Iggy George and Hillary Highland. So all that info can be found on our Eventbrite page. So if you want to check that out, I will put that link in the comments so you guys can go register if you're interested. And make sure if you're not following us on social media, it's at Maplewood Flats. And so that's where you can get all of the latest updates. And so finally, if you do enjoy events like these and want to support them, we actually do have a fundraiser going on to deal with the COVID impacts that Wild Bird Trust is facing. So if you are able to help, that would be awesome. We would appreciate that. I'm going to be also popping a link into the comments for the fundraiser so that you can donate and help support our operations. And yeah, so with that, I'll pass the mic to Wild Bird Trust President Erwin Ustindi, who is coming at you live from Al and Jude's backyard. And he'll introduce Thomas Flower, who will be interviewing today's guests. So yeah, Erwin, take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erwin Ustindi, and I'm the board chair for the Wild Bird Trust of BC, and I'm super excited to be here in Semiahmoo territory, South Surrey, here at the lovely backyard of Al and Jude. And we're going to be speaking with Dr. Thomas Flower, who will be interviewing Al and Jude, but maybe we should just, before Thomas comes on the line, we can just look briefly at your backyard.
Very good.
Because we're going to be talking about your life, and Thomas will be asking you questions. But I think given that we're here in a spectacular home that you've made for yourselves, maybe you can just take a minute or so and just talk about where we are and this life that you built with each other in this beautiful green space.
We live in a corner of Surrey known as Country Woods. And Country Woods literally means that we here are surrounded by a lovely forest. We have a lovely forest behind us, and we have a whole network of trails that wind through the woods so that we can go on our nature walks. And our yard itself has got quite a nice collection of trees, and attracts a wonderful selection of birds. And Jude could add a few things here.
I think one of the most enjoyable things here is being able to enjoy the birds. You can sit out in the backyard and watch them come in and sing and build their nests, and you get the odd hawk coming through here for just excitement. And it's a beautiful area. It's very quiet. We're far enough away from, those of you who know Surrey, 32nd or 176th, which are freeways. It's very nice. We very rarely hear anything from the traffic here other than occasionally. But it's a beautiful place. It's very quiet now.
Not only birds, but also we get deer visiting us. We get raccoons. Opossums come here. We've had lots of butterflies in this area. It's an amazing area for folks who love nature.
We also I also see here a selection of baked goods. And we've got
yum.
cheese and herb scones. We've got a confetti cookie for the lucky one, and a chocolate croissant. So that'll be lovely with the tea.
Yes.
Good.
Now I wanted to introduce Dr. Thomas. Thomas is a member of the board of the Wild Bird Trust. Like Jude, vice president, and myself, the president. Thomas is on our Habitat Committee, and Thomas grew up in the United Kingdom. He studied mammal and bird behavior in Africa, spending most of his time in the Kalahari Desert. He moved to Canada just a few years ago in 2015 with his family and joined Simon Fraser University to study Steller's jays. And he's now settled at Capilano University where he teaches. I know he teaches there because he teaches my daughter.
She passed with flying colors.
So while keeping the research going on Steller's jays at SFU and at the University of Cape Town, Dr. Flower is also a member now of the Wild Bird Trust's Habitat Committee. So without any further ado, Thomas, I'll pass things over to you, and excited to hear your conversation with Al and Jude.
Well, good afternoon, Thomas.
Hi there, it's great to see you both. And thank you, Owen, for the introduction. I hugely appreciate that. In preparation for today, I was scanning around for tidbits of information about both of you. And what immediately struck me was the enormous contribution you've both made to birding in BC. And it's a real pleasure for me to be able to chat to you, because although I joined the Wild Bird Trust recently, I haven't had a chance to really speak to you both too much. And so as a result, I'm really fascinated to hear about your work with Parks BC, and then also how you have worked on the ecology and birding in the Lower Mainland and BC more generally, and on outreach and education. I can't think of anybody in BC who's probably talked to more people about birds than yourself, Al, and you, Jude. It's an incredible contribution to spreading the word, in a sense, and making people aware of the environment around them. So I think we all owe you a huge debt of gratitude for your contribution to BC.
Well, thank you for the kind words. And you know, both Jude and I love nature, and we've always had, and I think that's what brought us together, a desire, a love to encourage other folks to appreciate and love nature, and we do it in our own way by taking folks on nature walks. You know, when we take a nature walk, we always try to make sure it's based on a theme. We never go on a nature walk just naming this, naming that, naming the next thing. A theme, make a story out of it, and so folks go away, you know, encouraged, and you know.
I think when you create that narrative, that's what we're looking to do here. You're telling a story, and I think you move beyond. We're all natural historians, but we don't always put that into context. And I think that's what's so amazing about what you do. You know what's out there, but you really tell the broader story.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I grew up in the area of Vancouver. It's called Camosun Bog, which is out towards UBC. And I think that's where I got my first love of nature there, was going there and with the boys in the neighborhood and collecting salamanders and picking flowers and doing all sorts of things. And it was just never turned back, just said, love it.
Isn't that wonderful? I think so many of us started that way, with an experience where we went outdoors and saw something unique. You know, we live in an environment which is quite homogenous in some ways in a city. And when you go out into nature, you encounter this incredible variable world. And I suppose what's so nice is the unpredictability. You don't know what you're going to see until you go out there, and then you always see something special, right?
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
So has anything turned up in your garden this morning?
What have we got in our garden this morning? Well, we've had American goldfinch. We have had chickadees. We've had downy and hairy woodpeckers. Jude here maintains our bird feeders, and we regularly here get about 20 species of birds, sometimes 25, pileated woodpecker. And you know, the forest here goes back. It's mostly deciduous here, mostly alder, big leaf maple, but mostly alder. And they're getting old, and so they're providing lots of great habitat and nesting opportunities for woodpeckers. We just behind us we have a tree here with all kinds of holes of cavity nesting birds, chickadees, nuthatches. It's quite incredible. The old alder. And we've actually encouraged the folks to do some of the maintenance around here, not to cut the whole tree down, but to leave maybe 6, 7, or 8 feet. And they're doing that. And you can see a lot of these trees now have chickadee cavities in them, nuthatches.
Isn't that nice?
County woodpeckers using them, not cutting it right to the ground. I think that's fantastic.
Isn't it just? And I mean, that's one of the joys, is that you have that accessible in your backyard. And I guess that's where a lot of people love to see their birds, you know, because they'll come so close when they habituate to a house. And I just moved to my house just here, and probably through this we'll see a little red-breasted nuthatch coming in time and time again. And I likewise, it's just a real luxury to be able to have nature on your doorstep like that. And it's not exclusive to those of us who have sort of big trees and so forth behind us. Before now, I was in the middle of Vancouver, Main and 44th, and there my feeder still had a ton of different birds. You know, things would come across that little peninsula there, and you'd see all kinds of things. And so they're a very accessible animal, which is so fortunate. How did you start out, Al? How
did I start out? Well, I think I've been asked this question many times. Where did I get what are the seeds? What were the seeds planted that grew into my love of nature? I'd have to say my dad. You know, and my dad was a keen gardener, and as a child, I used to love helping him in the garden. And in the garden, you can't help but notice a butterfly, a bird, some snails, and you wonder, what are they? What are they? And then eventually you say to yourself, well, I got to learn more about this. I've got to take some biology, zoology courses, and I've got to take some botany courses. I've got to join the Nature Vancouver and learn from other people, you know, and I've got to find myself a lovely life partner to share.
Who helpfully shares the same interests. That's a luxury.
Mentors over the years, you know, people like David Sterling and J.E. Underhill and people like that who helped me, who cultivated a greater interest. And they were some of my real heroes, you know, and I still remember them very well. Going out with Dave Sterling, very famous birder, going out with J.E. Underhill, looking at mushrooms and slime molds and all these things. It was fascinating. I said to myself, I've got to learn more about this. And then I said, we've got to share this with other folks. Share the joy of nature with other folks.
That's a nice thing you allude to there, is the links between yourselves and those other sort of stalwarts of natural history in BC. Big names, and it's like a lineage, isn't it? We pass this information on and we share it, and then you see another generation coming up who've had that link with those sort of great naturalists in BC's history, including yourselves, you know. And I think that's terrific that we can keep
I've always enjoyed too being out with children. You know, in the Parks branch, I was at one point the Voice of Jerry the Moose. I used to do an article about the Jerry the Moose program, which is a program for children about nature, about all kinds of other aspects of the park there, you know, of parks, I should say. And it just is, I just love being with children, going out on looking for birds, looking for spiders. Nothing more fun than going on a spider hunt, is there?
No.
Actually.
So I guess that gig, did that start quite early on when you joined BC Parks? And when was it that you both joined BC Parks?
I was with Metro Vancouver Parks for 20 years.
Uh-huh.
Started up as a park naturalist there. And again, with kids, running the nature house, doing programs, things like that over the years, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think there was a lot of good people that helped out in that, is to get us going in that. I found it just, you know, at first when I thought of it, you know, I want to work with kids, you know, and you get out there with them and they grow on you and they find things. And you teach them how to find things and look at them, be gentle, things like that. And I just got such a kick out of it. So much fun.
That's right.
Years spent with BC Parks. I we're in Golden Ears Park, and the head ranger there, Lou Kempo was his name. It was really neat. There were all kinds of things to do, but he always liked me to make sure there was school class coming, or if children were coming, or he wanted some information about the park. He always let me handle it. We were there just the other day on the Spirea Nature Trail. I helped set up years ago.
Fantastic. Yeah. So did you do a lot of your work up at Golden Ears? Was that one of your main parks where you worked?
It was, yes. It was one of my main parks, yep. I did school programs there. I did visitor programs there. Also at Raleigh Lake, the Jerry's Moose program. And then during the winter, there were all kinds of other things to do besides talk to park visitors, but which I enjoyed doing too. So it was a wonderful time for me. And yes, it was.
Yeah.
Wow. So I guess in your role there with BC Parks, were you responsible for all manner of different parks around the province, or were you on specific ones in sequence, as it were?
No, I originally the Parks branch was headquartered, organized out of Victoria. Then it was regionalized. But when it was still organized out of Victoria, my boss was in Victoria, I got to go all over British Columbia. I was to work as a park interpreter. And I actually worked as a photographer for some time for the branch at the time. And then I helped, I was an assistant to J.E. Underhill. He was on the coast here, so we would go up and make sure all these park naturalists, park interpreters, they needed help, they needed something. He wanted me to go and help them out with whatever they needed, and so that's what I did. And then then we were regionalized. I wound up at Mount Seymour, doing the. I helped with another good fellow, Desi Belton. We organized the first snowshoeing interpretive program, and now it's continued on too. And from then I was sent over to Golden Ears in Raleigh Lake, which was a great move for me.
For sure, and that's a nice way to bring those areas to life in the winter. My Stellar's J research out, which was done at the UBC Research Forest adjacent to Golden Ears. Winter, it's hard to get access back there, hey? And snowshoeing.
I have so much time trying to explain to people it's Stellar's J, not Stellar's J.
Yeah. I think the reason I got hired for that job was I spelt it correctly the first time I applied.
Stellar's J.
Yeah.
Bjorn Stiller.
So it sounds, through those work you did throughout the province, I guess you had the opportunity to go and really work in such a diverse array of environments. You'd have really seen the different ecosystems we have in this province in a way that many probably don't have the opportunity to do.
Yes, I did. And, from Wells Gray, Mount Robson and the Rocky Mountains there, to the Shuswap. You're right. I had the great opportunity. Jude here also worked in the Shuswap.
Yeah, I did 3 years there in the summer.
All right.
Yeah.
Lucky people. Is that a particularly favored area then of those that you visited?
Because we had the opportunity of being in the park in the summertime, and then when they had the big fish runs every 3 years, I got to stay there for an extra 3 or 4 months and talk to more people and more kids and busloads of them, and just wonderful.
What are the highlights up in the Shuswap for you?
I've often asked about that too, but what are my favorite areas? When you've been to Wells Gray and Mount Robson and you know, up in the Shuswap, I would say I have two or three favorite areas. One is the Maplewood Conservation Area. I really love it down at Osprey Point. There's a memorial bench there for our son who passed away when he was 16. And our son and ourselves used to love to sit there and watch the birds, watch the gulls dropping clams onto the rocks, even watch the trains going by, watch the birds, cormorants flying by. It's one of my favorite spots. Another one I would say would be Wells Gray Park. Fantastic. They're an amazing place for birds, for mammals. And I've met so many wonderful people there too, you know.
Neat area.
Yeah, and few people go up that way as well, you know. It's a little bit, it's not in the Rockies per se, you know, it's not so much of a spot for many, but as you say, it's a wonderful place to bird. I'm fortunate my father-in-law has a place in the Caribou, and I was recently able to get over there.
Manning Park, I would say, would be another one for sure. I spent quite a bit of time in Manning Park. And I just love the Manning Park because you can go from the wet side with the giant cedars, cross over through the spruce, Engelmann spruce forest, head out east where it starts to dry out, start to get the Douglas fir, eventually the ponderosa pine. And you get all the different birds and mammals and insects and butterflies, this contrast from east to west.
You know, and you just think, wow, no wonder they're out there, hey?
That is wonderful to watch them hover.
Yeah,
that's right.
Dive.
It was a very lucky experience, but I was thinking of you guys then. And
you see, that's what I show people. I say, is grab the fish. If it's got the tail pointing straight ahead, then it's going to labor to get to feed its young. It's got to get that fish head first. That's the aerodynamics of it all. That's called watching birds.
Yes. Yeah. There's nothing like sitting still. There's so much you see, hey? And a great spot to do so.
I've always considered myself to be a bird watcher.
Yeah.
I respect birders, but me, I want to be known as a bird watcher, somebody who loves every bird and wants to learn from them. Because I think every single living thing has a story to tell. And while we can see things, we have to actually look at these things and think about what stories they have to tell and how these things are connected one through the other. We're all connected. Everything's connected. We have to learn about how these things are connected. And that's what I find interesting about the joy of nature and sharing nature with folks, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yourself, Jude, I guess that was very much part of your work where you were working on ecology more generally in your roles. Was it Burnaby Lake that you managed in BC?
Yeah, Burnaby Lake, and I did transfer around. I was naturalist in charge for a couple of years there, so my staff that I had might be at Belcarrow one day and Campbell Valley the next and another regional park, or we would move them around. And it was a lot of fun watching them, as I say, kind of maybe first, second year university students that got a summer job and watching them develop and just kind of sitting back and watching them with the class and going, you know, good, you know. And they had questions at times too about, you know, well, how could we do this better or what can we do? Some of them are still working for Metro Parks, a couple of them I had.
Isn't it nice that we have these facilities in the city and available so that we can give people these opportunities?
It's very very important, because if we didn't have those, then how do we get the kids in the city to appreciate nature? It's one thing maybe to live in Surrey or up the valley or whatever, because you have more open land. But here, it's so important that, to me, nature study should have been one of the curriculum type things that needs to be in every year and every age group, and get them out, because it's disappearing so fast. It's hard to, you know, when we look at the subdivisions, even where we live here in Surrey, what was beautiful forest 10, 15 years ago is not anymore. And I think that we're losing that, and we need to somehow get that through the education system and through the public and through the politicians. Good luck. To think about that in the future. What are our great-grandchildren going to have? Is there going to be anything to look at?
I work with a great many biologists at CapU, and I respect them incredibly because of their professionalism. And in particular, there's one lady who was talking to me, Maya de Jong Westman, about how many think that environmental biology should be a required course for all university students, just because of the importance of being aware of our interaction with the environment and how it supports us, because that is so easily lost if you're growing up in an urban area, particularly. It's not a challenging perspective to learn, but it's very eye-opening. It changes people's interactions and how they work. So I wholeheartedly agree, bringing that in at some level of the curriculum. And I see that people are commenting as well in the chat simultaneously in support of this idea. And, you know, we'll see if we can build that into our degrees of my institution, certainly.
We can start it with kids getting into kindergarten. Something there that's just gentle and whatever. And as they get older, I think that it'll spark there at some point, and they'll appreciate it more and understand, because I think most of us that are in our probably age group know how it's different. I can think of where I grew up in Dunbar and what it looks like now, or two different planets, you'd think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We had the pleasure of interviewing and having a gentleman at CapU, Dr. Scott Sampson. He's the current CEO of Science World. And he wrote a book called Get Into Nature. And he's made several TV programs with the BBC about dinosaurs and encouraging children in. And so I see it happening. There are a great many people pushing this, and yourselves push this. And there's a lot of outreach and education. But yeah, let's see it come in a little more formally, maybe. That would be good.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. Just hope it works.
Yes, indeed. So how did you originally get involved with the Wild Bird Trust? Because, for example, yourself, Jude, you seem to be involved with an awful lot of nature-orientated organizations. It's a miracle you have any time to do anything else.
Well, I guess I met Tricia Banning Lover, who was one of the founders of that one, and we were friends with the family. So there we got involved at that stage. I think for the other ones, it was just more of a getting involved. I was in Scouts for many years. I wasn't a Girl Guide, I was a Scout, because we were looking for Scout leaders. So I had the beavers up to the 16-year-olds and that, and we used to do some work with them as far as learning nature and camping and all the things, the badges they did. I enjoyed doing that very much. That was a lot of fun, and run into some of those kids now, and they got their own kids.
And hopefully carrying on that message. And so was that right at the start of the Maplewood Flats Conservation Area when it was being born, I suppose, in the 94, was it?
It was in 94, I think it was. Yeah, it was around in that.
Well, I'd like to also maybe thank Kevin Bell as well. And eventually we met Patricia there and Dick Beard, the butterfly expert. And we just fell in love with the place. It was beautiful, and
it took a lot of work to get it.
Yeah.
A lot of money was donated to it, which was helpful, and it got the Interp Center there. Another good way of getting people in contact, rather than just walking in through the parking lot and walking the trails. There's now a way that we can reach out to them a little bit more, and for the kids as well, getting school groups through there. So I think it's just such a beautiful spot. But we could.
It absolutely is, and the work is ongoing. What's been done there, I read down the years, it's quite incredible. The bridge as well was something that was put in, and now at the Nature House, there's that capacity to really hold events and highlight the beauty of the spot, and hopefully enhance that down the years. I've got a student there right now who's using it, doing wetland assessments to see what's living there, and it's just been astounding to us, the kind of diversity in the little ponds. You know, we've got things through clams and worms and all kinds of insects and things people might not be so quite keen on, nematodes and flatworms and the like, but you know, it's just come alive, and that's a miracle given how recently it was industrialized land.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it could have been if it hadn't been taken over and bought, and there'd be a bunch of apartment buildings there, or there'll be industrial areas with big trucks and everything else.
Do you think that there's an opportunity with the developments that might be planned around Maplewood Flats? They might be negative in some senses because they might break up the connectivity with the local environment. But do you think it's going to be possible to further outreach and put people in touch and have some of those people that use that area come down and really enjoy the site?
So I think the potential there is just getting the message out and providing the kind of programs that people want to hear, you know. And I think, as I say, with the Interp Center now, we can do movies in there, or we could do things indoors in the winter when it's not very nice out. And if we can get more families coming on a regular basis. I'm always amazed when you get down there and you see all the moms and dads with the little kids. And I'm going, yes, start.
Well, that's how nature interpretation, you know, from the very beginning, from first writings about nature interpretation by Freeman Tilden. He wrote a book called Interpreting Our Heritage, which is still used as a basis by a lot of people. And that was the whole idea. If folks don't know about something, if they have no feeling about something, then they're not going to want to preserve it. So that's part of what nature interpretation is about, is helping folks to understand and appreciate the world around them. And that's what a skilled nature interpreter can do, you know. And learning about Maplewood, about the heritage of the Tsleil-Waututh folks, about this is all so important that the local people know that. And you know, sometimes, I hate to be a little negative, but sometimes it just upsets me when I see so many people walking around not looking at anything, you're not listening for anything, you're not
just walking.
Just walking. I mean, I could never do that. When I get people tell me it's dawdler, I dawdle, you know, stop and listen.
Yeah.
Maybe smell, you know, feel the air, feel this, you know, touch something and feel it. This is all part of being out in nature.
Yeah.
For me, just walking by something beautiful, listen to something beautiful, bird singing, and then walking by it, to me, that's just totally, I don't know what to say, except something I would never do.
Yeah.
Would never. You know, it's something I do think that, I don't want to go off and talk about changes in modern society, but even for myself, I noticed that I fed up when I had access to technology on the go. You know, that really changed things, because suddenly you're turned inwards, you know, into a different world. And that is interesting. It's very important to learn your own boundaries, so you can put those things away and say, now's a time when I'm just going to let my mind think and experience the world around. That's important, I think, to try and teach people to do that.
Yeah, very much
so too.
Yeah.
New challenge.
Yeah.
So if you go down the years at Maplewood, is there anything that really stands out to you? Something you've seen there which was just quite unexpected? Because that's what's interesting to me. I went out birding this morning. I happened to be picking something up down in Cortland, so I popped over to Colony Farm, which I've never been to before. which is, you know, a lovely area of reed and marsh. For those who know it, I'm sure you all know it, but I can't believe I hadn't been there. And I saw a savanna sparrow, and that to me was very exciting. Probably not for others, but you know, it was just lovely to see something new. Have you had anything where it just blew your mind that it turned up at Maplewood Flats?
I don't know. What have we had in rare birds?
What was that?
What would be a rare bird that we've caught at Maplewood?
A rare bird.
That's got everybody excited.
A rare bird.
I'm trying to think off the top of my
Who
head.
would be a rare bird?
Put some raptors in there.
You're not talking about a person, I guess.
No.
I think it's almost, you know, some things fly over and you can twitch them. And people,
Maybe Phoebe, maybe a mountain bluebird. That's a nice rare bird for Maplewood, a mountain bluebird.
Yeah.
someone's mentioning an American redstart as well.
Redstart.
Yeah.
Now there's Bullock's Oriole out there. And my friend Rob there said there's a redhead out there. Fantastic. Hopefully we're going to go and look for that redhead.
So my wife forbids me from collecting a list of birds in the worry that I'll become a fanatical twitcher and start flying off to countries to see a bird that's not been seen there before. So I guess, as you were saying earlier, that's not your bent per se as a birder. And I think for that reason, some of the things that stand out at Maplewood Flats are those birds that arrive with a story. So the northern goshawk is one that stands out to me because it came and it stayed. You know, it wasn't just there for a day. This was a bird which was wintering at the site, and that was kind of fantastic, I felt.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
What bird was that?
The goshawk we had for the last few.
That goshawk, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that was wonderful. The goshawk, yes, sure. That's a really rare opportunity there to observe the goshawk.
So, you know, very few of us get up into the back country, into the forests, and, you know, it's rare you're going to see one in a city like that, hey?
Even walking around the trails and seeing an owl. You know, if you stop and you point that out, you got a crowd around you very shortly. Oh, wow, never seen this owl. You know, and they're really excited about it. So, I mean, it's a wonderful place for that. And
you never know what you're going to see. That's the great thing.
Yeah.
In your mind, in birding today more generally in Vancouver, what are the big stories for you now, or the big changes which are currently underway?
Loss of habitat.
Yeah. It's kind of a double whammy, hey?
Another warehouse over there, another parking lot back there.
Yeah, I would say that's.
I think it's habitat loss. And that's scary. I mean, we are very lucky in the Vancouver, or what I'm saying, lower mainland region or regional area. We are very lucky with the parks and things that we have, but there's a lot that wasn't set aside that's now being used for other purposes. And I think we still have to get out as naturalists and people that enjoy nature and fight for those areas, even if the park is only 2 blocks by 2 blocks. It gives people a chance to open that door and understand it, you know, rather than, oh, well, I'm not going over there, you know, I'll sit at home and read the paper. You know, I think we've got to try and get people out. And if we could get more areas like that, and if we could get some people in those areas to kind of encourage people to go out and have a walk and show them things, what's there. Not just the kids, the adults, because I think they need it as much as we do. And as we get older, yes, we don't want to do the high energy things and climb up Mount Seymour or something like that, but we would like to go for a nice walk for a while and appreciate what's there, rather than, you see so many of the seniors now walking around and they're not looking at anything really. They're walking, which is good for their health, but it could be a lot more.
Well, that's why Maplewood is such a good, offers such a good opportunity, because you can go on a short loop, a little longer loop, you can go on the whole loop around the whole sanctuary, and depending on physical ability. But each loop has wonderful opportunities to show folks you know, all kinds of marvelous things.
Yeah.
Plant life, bird life.
So we need to keep those in Vancouver, those little natural areas.
Yeah.
Those kind of being lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a huge park, but it could just be a green space that stays there. They put a few trees in and maybe a bench or something like that. But a lot of us that are getting older now would like to just be able to go there and sit down for a little while and sit there and watch it. We don't have to be out wandering around.
Well, there are some examples, you know, of that in the Vancouver area, and one notable example is the sanctuary at Hastings Park.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very small area there, and people there have tried to enhance the area with plantings. They put in they put in a pond there, and it's just amazing how over the years that I've been going there, that I can't remember the exact number, but it's over 140 species of birds, I think, that have been seen in that small area. It's surrounded by industry and urbanization. I mean, this is a small area, and it's just, and the folks there who live in that area, a lot of them, for them, this is their nature experience.
Yeah.
The small sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's non-trivial, really, because some people might say, hey, well, what do these small pockets of land matter in the bigger picture of a province? But it's about the fact that we see them every day. So they're great for our health. It's great, actually, because urban areas are a really large percentage of our planet's surface now, less so in Canada, but elsewhere in the world. It's a big deal having this kind of environment in urban areas. And the other thing is, as you say, you won't value those places you don't see every day unless you also recognize the value in nature on your doorstep. And that's really why they matter so much to me personally.
Example I use is a vacant lot. You get a vacant lot in the city, and you look in the vacant lot, and you'll find white-crowned sparrows in there. You'll find song sparrows in there. Sometimes savanna sparrows in there. You'll find all kinds of interesting insects in there, butterflies in there, and that's in a vacant lot in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
Crazy, hey?
Nature is adapting that little piece of habitat.
Mm-hmm.
And
to me, one of the stories I'd love to hear your opinion on is the ravens in Vancouver. Now, everyone knows about the crows. We've got them in abundance. But what's really fascinating to me is when I first came here in 2015, and I came here to look at what basically Steller's jays eat other animals' chicks and eggs, okay? And that has impacts on where those birds choose to live. And so I came here, and the first thing I saw outside my door near Nat Bailey Stadium was a raven eating a crow chick, you know? And that to me was fascinating because I commuted across the city in various directions on my bike, and I've seen so many ravens. And I wonder what your impression is on how they're affecting the crows and how that can then affect things that the crows eat. So what do you reckon on that?
Yeah. How the ravens are affecting the crows?
That's right.
Well, they're setting the crows.
Yeah.
I worked at the wild birds shop on Broadway there near Granville, and very frequently I could hear a cacophony of crows, and I would say to myself, what have they got, an eagle? No, most of the time it turned out to be a raven sitting up there being harassed by all these crows. And I think they're giving the crows a run for their money.
I wonder if they'll start pushing the crows out of some areas, you know?
So I think they're outsmarting those crows.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Raven
And just excluding them completely, you know? And I wonder if that might be a little bit of a boon for all of the smaller songbirds, you know, if we can see that happen, because the ravens, they're so widespread. that it could be that they force those crows out of those areas. And, you know, with these kinds of interactions, as Vancouver as a city grows up and gains sort of a more natural suite of animals, might see these kind of changes happen.
It'd be interesting to kind of do a study about, because years ago we did in Vancouver have crow studies. And of course, if you saw a raven, it went down in the other column, but you got to see them. But it's, you know, are there more? Are there less? How are they doing? And what is their impact? And maybe we should have another crow survey annually or something like that. It used to be a fun event to do because everybody go out there. And of course, they were moving back and forth. We probably counted some of them a number of times.
That's right.
Go out there and go, gee, I didn't think there was that many around here.
That's right. I had a chat to Rob Butler about it, and he's been keeping a vague eye. So many of you will know Rob Butler. He's kind of the Vancouver crowman. And he also had been spotting this. And so he'd kept a tab on a few different nests from ravens. So, you know, if we see them, maybe we should start working out where they're nesting and see what kind of effect they're having. You know, this is looking...
Right now where you saw them or where the nest was or something, and keep track of that, you know. And,
yeah, it'd be good fun.
Another good project.
Yes.
Well, crows are smart, but I think ravens are smarter.
I had an incident where I was out in the forest and this raven came over to me and just started hanging out.
Yeah.
And I just thought, have you come to see if I'm going to make any food, or are you kind of hoping that something will eat me and then you'll get a piece of the remains?
Yeah. Oh, we love ravens.
Yeah. Well, they play an important part with our culture too, through the First Nations and that. They were a bird of choice. And
it was exciting to hear the mellow croaks of a raven.
Yeah.
Lovely.
We talked about habitat change and habitat loss. Of course, the other thing that's going to accelerate that process on BC more generally is going to be climate change. So we know that about 50% of the habitats we currently have are going to change into a new habitat in the future. And in the case of some of those ones up the mountains, there may be nowhere for them to go. So things like the pika you mentioned beforehand. So have you seen these changes in your experience, and how do you perceive this going in the future?
Over the years, yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think now. I think I see more invasive plants. I think I'm trying to think of how to frame the answer here. Perhaps you could just restate the question.
I think what I'm interested in is whether you've seen climate change affecting the environments in BC already, and what you think is going to happen in the future. It's a big ranging question.
Yeah, how climate change is going to... Well, that's correct. I mean, you know, mammals like the pika, for example, I've seen where marmots have disappeared from certain areas. We used to get hoary marmots regularly in Manning Park, for example. Pikas, it's predicted, are going to have to move to higher elevation. I mean, certainly these things are happening, and as I said, I see more and more invasive plants, and certain birds have disappeared from certain areas.
Part of it's sort of a weather thing too, because I think our weather habitats weather is changing, and therefore that's affecting a lot of the things we have. And is that caused by us humans doing things to the atmosphere or whatever? Or is it, you know, what is causing that? I think there's a whole bunch of things that are creating it. But I don't know whether we've studied it enough. I think someone like you, probably at university, that would be something to kind of what is affecting our habitats.
Just occurred to me, just a small example here. When we first came here, the warbling vireo, for example, was a very common bird through here. Now, you get a few warbling vireos, but I would say the warbling vireo populations here have declined dramatically. Now, it's only anecdotal on my point, but something has occurred here. Maybe it's where they winter, but I think something's occurred around here because warbling vireo and is just not a common bird in these woods anymore.
Yeah.
Just not.
Yeah.
I think, to my mind, change is what's going to happen. You know, we're just going to see different species moving up and other species moving elsewhere. It's just a question of whether the environments that they rely on can move fast enough to keep supporting.
The common bird feeders here, we don't see them anymore. Now we see the Eurasian collared dove, but mourning dove is gone. People used to come here to enjoy seeing the mourning dove. We can't show them mourning doves anymore. No. Mourning dove's gone from this area. We don't see it here or down in the flats below us here. We don't see it. No, it's gone.
I think maybe that's what I was getting at with my question. So really, rather than sort of saying, how has climate change affected things? It's more just, have we seen a shifting baseline? You know, you've had the experience of being in a BC when it was less developed, and you'll have probably seen things vanish. And I think that's really the understanding we want to have, is that what we're seeing now is maybe less than there was before, but that's not a permanent state. We don't have to accept that trajectory. You know, and that's something I feel like we want to bring across in our education when we take people out as well. What do you say are the messages that you bring to the people you take out on walks? What do you try to convey to them most importantly?
What do you convey to them, Jude?
Well, I think just the idea that we have to be, as you say, aware of what's going on, not just to look at things and assume that they're always going to be there or what the changes are going to be. The weather, well, you say we can't do nothing about the weather, but it still has an impact on us. And I think humans are probably one of the main causes of a lot of our problems. You know, that we're doing things that are affecting the environment that we don't realize. And I'm not saying it natural, but just about naturalists, but the general public, I would think, as a whole, doesn't have an understanding of, well, if you cut that tree down, that tree down, that things are going to change. How do we get that across to the general public and the kids coming up from below, of course? Mm-hmm. Something that we've got to educate ourselves. It's like, you know, it's a regular spot on the TV that says your 5-minute commercial, you know, about doing something, but something that gets people to think about it. You know, most people don't think about, if I walk from here to the mailbox and back, do I look at any of the trees, the plants, or anything else? No. You know, that sort of thing. People aren't focusing on that. They don't realize the environment is fragile. Still think that. I think they, you know, it's here.
Well, we share the earth. No, we share the earth with a host of plants and animals and critters, fungi and slime molds and all kinds of things. Yeah. And all these things are interrelated, you know, and we are a part of the nature too. And so we need to, in order to preserve what we have so we don't look like Mars, we have to take an interest and just learn to love nature and what we see around us. I try to get across this idea of just, you know, finding joy in nature. That's what I find. That's what I found in my life anyway. And
enjoy it.
The joy of nature, you know. Yeah. That's the title of a book too.
I can't thank you enough for sharing that message, really, to bringing your enthusiasm for what you see and your understanding of how we're interacting with the environment, and then bringing that to all of us in your walks, your talks, your outreach throughout your careers. It's just such a wonderful contribution, and sharing all the things you've seen and helping us experience that delight just as well. I want open up and ask if there are any questions in the chat room. If anyone wanted to ask Al and Jude those, you probably heard me ask enough questions by now. So feel free to type one, or maybe you could unmute and speak if you'd like, and try one of those options.
So we've actually got a couple of questions coming up in the chat. So there's one from Nora asking, could we ask about riparian zones around streams? Governments have increased the area, and Al and Jude have led many walks in the Skagit Valley.
You hear that, Jude?
So the question is asking about riparian zones around streams.
Riparian zones around streams.
Do you have a comment on that?
Well, let me get a little closer here.
That's okay.
What was the question? Can you repeat, please?
So the question is about riparian zones around streams. And
Riparian zones.
Riparian zones, yeah.
Yes.
The importance of them.
Oh, they're very important. These riparian zones, for example, are very rich in bird life, in all kinds of other animal life, in the various species of flora that grow there. Plus, the riparian zones help to shade the water, help to keep the water cooler, more oxygen, helps the fish and the other water creatures. So that's why the riparian zones are so important. And by the way, there's been a big fight over the years here in this part of the world to save the riparian zones along rivers like the Little Campbell here, which is a fabulous river. And without the riparian zones, you wouldn't have this wonderful diversity of life. Thank you very much. It's true.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. Hopefully that answered your question, Nora. And Pat Newton wants to ask about your time at Swan Lake.
Swan Lake.
When were you at Swan Lake? Or what you did there?
I was never at Swan Lake.
You weren't.
Not Swan Lake.
No.
Raleigh Lake.
Raleigh Lake.
Raleigh Lake, Raleigh Lake is near Mission up the Fraser Valley, and it's kind of a satellite park, you will, of golden ears. So I worked there as a park naturalist, and I did the children's programs there, and I also wrote quite a thick document there, a natural and cultural history document on the park, the natural history, the cultural history, and which was put out by the BC Parks, and I did a bird survey there, and I did other projects like that. But mainly, I was a park interpreter.
Yeah, I think she was asking about Swan Lake in Princeton. Although I'm not sure.
Princeton.
Yeah.
Familiar with that one?
No, I've never had Swan Lake. I've been there, but I was never worked there. I couldn't offer you. I know there are other Swan Lakes around too.
Yeah.
Swan Lake's a common name for lake.
I think though there is a naturalist club in the Princeton area.
Oh, there is, yeah.
There
certainly is a nature club up there. The what do they call themselves?
I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment.
Yeah. It's not called. I'll think about it in a moment here.
Yeah.
I think
so there's another question.
Vermilion Forks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's so. Yeah, make a parabola. No, it can't even hear.
Can they repeat the question?
Yeah, I think that the place someone was mentioning was Vermilion Forks.
Vermilion Forks.
Yep.
The Vermilion Forks naturalist, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where you can get some info.
It's a wonderful group too.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful naturalist club. They produced their own they produced a book about naturing opportunities in the Princeton area. Jude and I love it in the Princeton area too, on the old Copper Mountain Road.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous butterfly bird country. There's a little marsh there, which is just fantastic.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
You know, all kinds of warblers in there, soarer rails, and
yeah,
it's just fantastic in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Sue, and she asks, do you have any recommendations of resources to utilize when birding and exploring nature with children?
Oh yeah, there are.
We do?
Yes.
Thank you, Sue. There's a program called Nature Kids.
Mm-hmm.
Nature Kids, and Nature Kids encourages groups,
yeah,
nature clubs,
mm-hmm.
to hold field trips,
yeah.
workshops,
mm-hmm.
for young people. I've done, Jude and I have done a number of them at times. For example, I mentioned spider hunts.
Yeah.
Nothing nicer than to take children on a spider hunt. Going looking for owls, looking for eagles, doing all kinds of things with the children. But it's through Nature Kids, and they publish a wonderful magazine, which is called Nature Wild. Mm-hmm. And I've had a column in there almost since the beginning called Ask Al. So it'll be in there in the forthcoming issue. I'll have one all about hummingbirds. Mm-hmm. Ask Al, yeah. So Nature Kids, just Google Nature Kids, and their headquarters are at the bottom of Mount Seymour Park, along with Nature BC, and they'll give you all kinds of information you need about Nature Kids and the whole program, which is a wonderful program started by Daphne Selecki of Nature Vancouver.
Well, there is the Project Wild program as well, which has a workbook, which you can gives you a whole bunch of suggestions on programs that you can do with kids when you take them out, or how to do it if you feel a little nervous about kind of what the data is. And that book is available too. If you can't find it, somebody could contact me. I can give you some more information.
But Nature Kids is an award-winning program too.
But they've got some great resources.
Yeah, it's an award-winning program. So it just Nature Kids, I would say, and of course with Wild Bird Trust, the Kingfisher Kids too.
Kids,
the Kingfisher Kids.
Some of the naturalist clubs throughout the province have developed their own programming and things like that. So it depends if you're from an area that has it. Victoria.
The Wild Bird Trust children's program is called not Nature Kids, but Kingfisher Kids.
Kingfisher Kids, yeah.
Which is really neat, I think.
There's some really good ones there.
Yeah, it's a very nice, very good question. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so we actually have it's not a question, but a really nice comment from Laura. And she says, thank you so much for the Jerry the Moose programs at Golden Ears. You had such a huge impact on my 4 children. They're all naturalists now.
What was that?
The lady that was talking about the Nature Kids program, that her kids went to your program many years ago, and they got really hooked into it, that one.
Yeah, they're all natural.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a proud part of my life, being involved with Jerry the Moose program, you know, because we did nature park safety, how to go out in the woods and not get lost.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
How to look for signs, how to track animals. We did all kinds of things like that with the nature, with the children. It was a lot of fun. I had as much fun as the kids did. It's very good. nice to meet folks who once came out on programs, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, some of them now are probably teachers, and if that's where they've got hung up on, and they've got there, and they're doing it with their kids now, so it's great. It's, you got to pass it on and get the kids really enthused about nature. We watch too much TV and other stuff now. We need to get the kids out there and have them enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we're gonna be running out of time soon, so we'll take a couple more questions. So there's one question about house wrens. So he's asking, or they're asking, what does Al know about house wrens?
House wrens.
I have a bird box filled with twigs, but the nest didn't stay.
Yes. Well, you know what? At one point, that's a very good question about house wrens. You know, at one time, all we would get in this part of the Fraser Valley essentially was, except for the occasional house wren, Buick's wren. But over time, and we know a number of people here who have nesting house wren. House wrens seem to be getting commoner. It's only anecdotal on my part. It would be a good study for somebody to do, but I think this might be related again to climate change. You know, more interior like climate. You know, and that's what's happening. We're getting changes like that. A good question. Yeah, more house wrens. Yeah, you used to only get a few. You don't have to go to the Gulf Islands or the interior to see them, and now you get them quite a few here.
Yeah,
nesting in boxes around here. Yeah, very good question. Yeah, yeah. Have to see a house wren now would not be an uncommon bird. No, not the way it was, say, 10 or 15 years ago. But I think a good study would really tell us more about that.
Yeah. So Nora asks, is Nature Kids across Canada?
Nature Kids across Canada? Is that
or is it across Canada?
Yeah, well, the question is Nature Kids across Canada. I think the Canadian Nature Federation has a program as well. There are various programs from different groups. Yes, they have one too. Yeah. But I don't know much about their, you know, what the contents of their program are. But
you might be able to Google that one and see whether it'll come up under their title or whether they have that book.
Under Nature Canada or the Canadian Nature Federation.
Yeah,
both of them would be.
Yeah.
Would be in.
I'm sure there's lots of materials out there that we haven't seen over the years.
I should mention too. Bird Studies Canada also has wonderful programs directed at youth.
Yeah.
So I would say looking into what Bird Studies Canada has to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just lots of opportunities. It's just a matter of tracking them down and finding what they have and whether it's relevant to the area that you're teaching in or working with the youth.
I just want to take one moment here to say, if you're watching Desi Belton here, who I worked with in Manning Park and in the Snowshoe program when we started it up at Mount Seymour. Hope you're watching, and too bad we couldn't get together again this this spring, but
we'll do it.
Yeah, Desi's a wonderful interpreter of nature with the folks up there and up in New Anche area there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inspired so many children.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I don't see any more questions coming in, but Pat Newton actually, she found a hummingbird nest right outside their window while we were having this event. So
Oh,
that's pretty cool.
yeah. Yeah, the lady that was listening in on
Yep.
the listening in on the
Right.
program said she had a hummingbird show up at her nest outside her window.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Well, that's wonderful. That's a good sign.
the bird was listening.
That's a wonderful sign, you know.
Bird was going, what are they talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't see any more
Just-
questions, but if you guys have any last things to add,
Closing comments?
yeah.
Closing comment. I just want to say, well, Jude can add here too. I just want to say how wonderful it's been to be in touch with everybody through these wonderful new technology here. I myself have been called an old school naturalist. That's what they actually call me. One of my friends have been also called old school naturalists. We're the ones who like to look at everything and make sure we know everything about everything. And I just want to say how nice it's been that both Jude and I could communicate with everybody. Yeah,
It's great.
and thanks everybody, and do take care.
Yeah.
Keep safe.
And if you have any further questions, you can
Yeah.
talk to either Al or myself. We do have a
Exactly.
website. We don't have a website, but we do have an email, and you could contact us that way. And we'd be pleased to help you out. If you have any more questions about resource materials or how to get them, we can
And
do
when
that.
things turn around, which I'm sure they will, we'll get together on the trails again
Mhm.
at Maplewood.
We should make this an annual event.
Yeah.
And
So
don't forget
Yeah, just a second.
Rob Blisk and Rob Alexander having that nice program about the dawn chorus. If you've never experienced the dawn chorus program at Maplewood, it's fantastic.
yeah, you
Birds
actually beat me to it because
need
I was just
to
gonna announce our
come up,
upcoming
greet
events.
the sun.
Especially if you love being birding at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's wonderful.
Yeah, but the birds greet the sun.
Yes.
And it's sort of like almost like a symphony. All the birds, and then by 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, everything dies down, and maybe a few birds are left singing. It's just amazing,
I'm gonna grab
an amazing experience. You can't miss it. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and so yeah, like Al said, we have a lot of upcoming online events like the Dawn Chorus. So I'm actually going to be popping that link in the chat right now, as well as a link to our COVID response fundraiser. So yeah, if you guys could check that out, that would be great. And thank you so much. This has been so fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed.